While Dark Knightmon possesses that much competency, it will use any means to achieve its goals, and won't hesitate to get its hands dirty, and sometimes it will even be willing to betray its own comrades. As the Dark Forces returned to base, they had a somber tone. Two of their generals had fallen, and a majority of the attacking force had actually been lost, and Imperialdramon being injured did not help. As Chaos Gallantmon followed behind with the remaining forces, they returned to their camp at the edge of the desert area. As previously, Grey Knightsmon had split apart after revealing the captured Rise Greymon to Imperialdramon, as Dark Knightmon as well as Metal Greymon stand ready to address Imperialdramon. However, this would not go in their favor, as both were lunged to the ground, as Imperialdramon had been angry with them, as it had told them plenty of times that if they were going to address him, they'd have to appear as Grey Knightsmon. As Grey Knightsmon possesses the power to actually be a threat, both Dark Knightmon and Metal Greymon, although being strong, are nowhere near the power they need to be. As they would recombine into Grey Knightsmon, Imperialdramon would shock them, as it would tell them that they needed to be strong general. As this unknown promotion was going to be the case, both of them were shocked as they turned around and were greeted by the Dark Forces that were now under their command. As the lieutenants in Musayamon and Gigadramon were happy as they floated and also stood beside their new general. As the Dark Forces that were now under its command would cheer, it was made clear that Grey Knightsmon was gaining the respect it thought it deserved. As we would pan over to Imperialdramon and Chaos Gallantmon, a discussion was being held as to why making Grey Knightsmon the next general happened so quickly. As Imperialdramon would tell Chaos Gallantmon that it did not trust those two Digimon, whether they're combined or not. However, if it was going to keep an eye on them, it needed to make sure that it gave them a position that it could actually look at. And this was one as being the general, as not just Imperialdramon being overseer of it, but also Chaos Gallantmon being able to check on them. If they were to do anything, that would be confusing. As the day drew into night, Grey Knightsmon headed off into the desert as it normally did. However, he would be greeted by Angemon. As this meeting seemed tense at first, it wasn't until one of Angemon's wings peeled up and a little creature came out, this thing looking like a one-eyed spider. This was Parasimon. Parasimon had been living inside Angemon, controlling its body and taking it over, as Angemon at this point is almost a husk. As Grey Knightsmon asked Angemon, or at least Parasimon in this case, where it had been and what had it achieved since it was gone. In order to understand this situation, we have to go back a bit, and we head back into the desert, as Dark Knightmon and Metal Greymon at this time had been met by Kazuhamon, as Kazuhamon at this time had captured Angemon, as Angemon had done a risky maneuver to allow Rise Greymon to escape, as they were the scouts of the three great angels. However, in the case of Angemon, it had been tortured and is now at the mercy of whatever Kazuhamon wanted done. As Kazuhamon asked the two Digimon what would they like to do. As a pledge of loyalty and also a showing of faith to both of them, they would be given Angemon and see what they could do. It was at the behest of Dark Knightmon that it actually had an idea of what to do with Angemon. As Parasimon appeared, as Dark Knightmon told Parasimon that this would be his next mission, as it would begin to overtake Angemon. Unfortunately for Angemon, this was no fate befitting a holy warrior, but what could it do, as Parasimon would bore itself into its body and begin to take it over. As that is what fills into the gap of time, and ever since that day, Angemon had been a husk, and almost a puppet for their nefarious goals. Now, in order to understand the next plot, we need to move on, as both Dark Knightmon and Metal Greymon would lead their legion towards their next campaign. As little does Imperialdramon know that although it wants these two Digimon to take over the next area, they have their own agenda. And that was going to become very clear soon. As Dark Knightmon and Metal Greymon led their forces through the desert, they headed north as there was a new area that they needed to take over. And this area was one that Dark Knightmon knew all too well, as it headed towards the formation of the Monarch Knights, led by Lord Knightmon. As they approached, Lord Knightmon had scrambled whatever forces it still had left, as for the most part, most of the Knightmon forces had been dispatched to areas all over the digital world, whether it is to aid or as well as reinforce other areas. They are all that remains to protect the Monarch Knight Castle. However, Lord Knightmon itself remained, as well as its second in command, Wise Knightmon. As Wise Knightmon would be told, they would have to prepare the forces for battle. It would lead them into the desert to deal with the dark forces that were approaching, as Lord Knightmon would stay behind to protect the castle at all costs. As they would be met in the desert, Dark Knightmon would actually lead the charge against Wise Knightmon, as believe it or not, this is a rematch from a time before. As the formation of Knightmon and Gladdymon stood strong, the dark forces prepared for their battle on the ground, as all the ground force Digimon had rallied behind Dark Knightmon, as Dark Knightmon is still technically their general, so they obey, and they prepare for their combat. However, little did they know that this was not the only assault coming. With Metal Greymon's ability to fly, and Gigadramon being able to fly, the other Dark Force Digimon that of the air had appeared in the sky and were preparing for their bombardment against the castle itself, as a two-pronged assault was needed to achieve what they needed to do. As they dove into battle, all of a sudden Lord Knightmon was shocked, as the Digimon from above began to attack, mercilessly bombarding the castle, leaving them with little more to do than try to defend. However, as we zoomed back into the battle in the desert, Dark Knightmon was facing Wise Knightmon. However, Wise Knightmon was more shocked as Dark Knightmon said that this was funny, that this was actually had happened before, but this won't be going so well for Wise Knightmon, as it would explain who it actually was. Dark Knightmon was actually Skull Knightmon that had befriended Deadly Axemon. In its Cavalier mode, it actually decided to do a rebellion against the Monarch Knights, believing that it was the one who understood exactly what they needed to do, as it tried to destroy the main castle and to show the other Digimon that it was truly stronger. However, Wise Knightmon appeared, and with a swift battle, Wise Knightmon had overpowered and defeated Skull Knightmon in its Cavalier mode. Nearly defeating the Digimon, it was barely able to escape. But little did Wise Knightmon know that that was its mistake by letting it go. As both battlefields began to understand the situation, the reinforcements decided to pour out from the castle, deciding it was best to defend it from the aerial bombardment, as the remaining Knightmon and Gladdymon poured out of the castle to defend the front. This actually was more than enough, as they were able to repel them, forcing Metal Greymon and some of the aerial forces to disappear by heading out to the desert. But little did they know, this was all going a part of the strategy. As Dark Knightmon and Wise Knightmon were almost perfectly matched, Dark Knightmon said it was time to show them the power of their ability, as Metal Greymon dove into the battlefield to assist. This is when Dark Knightmon simply showed its face and did nothing more than turn its cape, as the unity ability that they possess, being a new form of evolution, at least by other Digimon, known as the Digicross, took place, as now, all of a sudden, Grey Knightsmon had hit the battlefield, and Wise Knightmon was completely surprised, as they had never seen anything like this, as now it began a battle against Grey Knightsmon. However, it was very clear from the first attack that Grey Knightsmon was more than a match for Wise Knightmon, and Wise Knightmon was easily losing. Being between the Ultimate and Mega level, Wise Knightmon is strong. However, this is nothing compared to the beyond or the almost mega level power that Grey Knightsmon has, as this began to overwhelm it. However, to its surprise, Lord Knightmon had arrived, deciding that it was best to finish the battle, as it believed that all the air forces had left. It needed to press the assault here, so it jumped in to save its right hand. Shockingly, Lord Knightmon was beginning to easily overpower Grey Knightsmon. As Grey Knightsmon was being more and more pushed back, it was more of a surprise that Lord Knightmon had actually come at all. As we move on to the other area, Musayamon and Gigadramon attempted to stop Wise Knightmon from joining the battle, seeing that if it joined, there's a good chance they would easily overpower Grey Knightsmon. As Grey Knightsmon was thrown to the ground, Lord Knightmon used a Spiral Masquerade to push it away, as this was too easy for it. However, little did it know that this was actually a part of Grey Knightsmon's plan, as it used the two cannons on its side to blast the area, causing a dust cloud. As Lord Knightmon did not understand what that meant. However, inside the castle itself, horrible things are going on. The detachment of the dark forces that were actually the part of the aerial unit had been waiting, hiding in the clouds and the shadows, for the time that they needed, as they sprung onto the castle and broke through. As Devimons and Dark Gabumons that were brought alongside had began to easily overwhelm the remaining forces, as the very little bits of Gladimons that still remained were forced to fight no matter what. However, they were not a match for the Digimon that had come. And unfortunately, as the Devimon began to pour into the back area, they found the digital vault that they had been told to look for, and found the treasure that they had been sought after, this being a network key. As the Devimon and the others grabbed a hold of the key, they were able to retreat, as all the Knightmons had actually been in the desert area, fighting along the other dark forces. However, to their surprise, as the Devimons arrived with the key, Black Galgamon actually called the retreat, shocking everyone else, as the dark forces had simply turned around and ran away. As Grey Knightsmon was happy, as that although it did not win its full battle for Imperialdramon, it received the treasure that it wanted, and now put the rest of the digital world in peril. As, for those who don't know, the network keys are needed, as they allow specific areas access to other parts of the digital world that had been sealed off or became more difficult to enter. And in the case of this network key, this one is used to unlock the dark area. As we transition out into the net, we would see that Omegamon is on its way back. After being called by Yggdrasil after the fall of Cherubimon, it was headed back to the digital world after being sent on a mission to travel the net to deal with certain Digimon. However, seeing that it still was too far away, it decided to contact its protege, this being Omegamon Alteress. As Omegamon Alteress was contacted by its big brother, in the case of Omegamon in this case, it told them simply that if they could deal with the issue in the digital world before it could get there, as it was unsure if it was going to get better or worse. As Alteress would simply oblige, it would head back through the net as it was closer to the digital world and prepared to deal with the threat, whatever it may be. In the case of the Dark Forces, we return to the base camp. As Imperialdramon had been informed of the situation with Grey Knightsmon, it wasn't upset. However, it was more preoccupied with something else, as both Ebamons that it had under its control had been torturing Rise Greymon, as Rise Greymon was resisting its dark influence. Imperialdramon simply said that it would ruin it, as the darkness began to overtake it, as what it was trying to do was unknown to most, but the Ebamon understood exactly what they were being forced to do, as in the next instance, Rise Greymon's pupils began to go dim. However, it underwent the ability of evolution and turned into Shine Greymon, as we would see the force evolution upon it appear. All the Imperialdramon could say was yes. as the dark forces are about to receive a weapon that it had been waiting to get for a long time. As we look into this part, there's a few things that can be learned. More importantly, the struggles of war. As sometimes the leaders that we have ignore the mistakes that they make and the losses that they have because they have to focus on winning. That victory at all costs is all that matters. We could also see that unfortunately for Digimon like Grey Knightsmon, they have their own agenda. However, will that agenda eventually lead them to destruction, or will it benefit everyone? We do not know. In the case of the situations, the digital world is mounting its offenses and defenses as best it can. However, for the dark forces, they have never really truly had a massive loss until their last battle. And in the case of Omegamon, Alteress coming, this will be the first major test the dark forces will have in a very long time, as this is one of Yggdrasil's incarnate descendants being put into the battlefield against them. Now, will they actually be able to succeed? This will be something you'll have to see in the next part. But also remember that when there is dark, there will also be light. And the light may be shining a lot sooner than they think. Now this is Brad from the Ad Army signing off. And for all of you out there, to sign on.